I thank everybody for being here today, coming with the spirit of solving the problem. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to call a few people up who are going to help solve the problem because some of them have helped create the problem at different times of their career. They're now all problem solvers. Would you please welcome to the stage in no particular order, or certainly in this order because he's the Mayor, Ned Mannoun, the Mayor of Liverpool Council. I promised I wouldn't say Return of the King, but up you come, Ned, he's back. To Joe Nahas from Coronation Property. Joe has I said the aforementioned Moore Point, which is an issue that has been one of his really strong suits and a passion of his to keep going. It's really important. To somebody else who's got some skin in the game, to Jackie Vozzo, the president of UDIA from Penrith Lakes. Tough talking lady from Penrith who helping us find a solution. And also to Sophie Pickett-Heaps, the design guru of Stockland. So welcome everybody. Now Ned, I put on the cranky pants and thrown down the gauntlet to government, and they'll all be bagging me all afternoon at Macquarie Street for upsetting the apple cart. You're sitting out here in Liverpool, epicentre of the crisis, the LGAs of southwest Sydney. The LGAs of northwest Sydney would love to be the crisis they used to be. They just want homes coming back, but everybody's saying south of the M4 is where the load's going to be carried. Tell me your frustration you've come back to council, you've had time off after council, you went and worked in commercial real estate, so you've got a double perspective to it. Lead us off with why should we have some confidence, hopefully, that we're going to find solutions, or are you still mired in that sense of despair?
We hope with new government there is a sense of hope. We would like to see it, but the thing is, how do we solve this problem, and what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve? A good question was saying, we talked about housing affordability. Well, yeah, I would say, well, we do have a lot of affordable housing out there, and we don't really have an issue. So, for example, everyone have a look, go to your phones, go on the app Domain and have a look for what it costs to buy a one-bedroom unit in Liverpool. At the moment, you can get a one-bedroom unit for $299,000 right now in Liverpool. Near a train station, in an old big building, probably 20 or 30 grand to give it a good renovation. You're near the biggest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. You've got world-class universities, Western Sydney University, Wollongong University, right here, your doorstep. So the question is, there is affordability, but what are we actually lacking? What are we trying to achieve? We need to build good places for people to live. If anyone has an opportunity, go to Netflix and watch that documentary, Blue Zones, because it talks about where people want to live and where do you actually get successful lives. I strongly recommend it. It's only 4 episodes, and it's really, really good. 2012, I think it was, we chose a winner in Parramatta. Western Sydney all got together with Sydney and said, Parramatta is the second CBD. Let's put the funding behind it, and let's actually make it work. And from that decision, all of a sudden, everything came with it, the housing and the amenity. What we now need to be doing in this area is choosing Liverpool as the next winner, as the third CBD. We have the opportunity to take the growth with the massive amounts of amenity that exists, so government doesn't have to go and spend the money. It is right, it's available, and we're prepared to actually do the work. We cannot think about Western Sydney as one area anymore. So just put it like this, if Western Sydney is one area, that means Eastern Sydney, from Sutherland Shire up to the Northern Beaches, is another area. That doesn't work. We are getting 20,000 people a year moving into Liverpool, Camden, Wallandilly, and Campbelltown and Camden. What are we there? That's the southwest. 20,000 people. That's more than Hunters Hill Council every year moving into the southwest area. So there is hope, but I think what we need to do as a collective here is make the decision, say, we need to be choosing this area as the next winner and make it become the next Parramatta that can take 20, 30, 40,000 homes immediately.
Now, I teed off on how state government can start doing stuff differently. It's business as usual has left the building because we're not going to solve it with something different. You've come back to council, you've got a new CEO, John Ajaka, who's here, and some of your other councillors. What are you going to do differently? How does Liverpool become part of the solution completely? How do you do non-business as usual at a local government level to actually affect in a crisis?
So if we go back to, for us, it's clarity of purpose. What are we actually trying to do as a council? For us, it's about improving the quality of life for the people of Southwest Sydney, the ones who live here today and the ones that will live here in the future. That's what we're trying to do. By having that purpose, we then work from there. We're building a whole new city, right? We can build jobs. You saw Austral there. Now, Austral was rezoned land, 30+ thousand houses going into it, and it's being rolled out, and it started from 2017. But you still have no footpaths, no roads, no trees. It's an absolute example of how not to do things. But then, if people want to live out there because it's affordable and they want the great Australian dream, you know, the one used to be the quarter-acre block, now it's 300 square meters for $650,000. We're investing in our city centre. And I think everyone in this room can make a massive difference to housing affordability. We all come from organizations. People want to live close to where they work. That's fundamental. Why are we now, if we're going to improve the quality of life of the people of Southwest Sydney, that's our purpose, we need to get people out of their vehicles and out of the public transport, spending the 2 to 3 hours every day trying to get their place of employment. In reality, we only have a few hours every day to ourselves. By the time we leave, go to work, come back home, spend a bit of time with the kids, what do we actually get for ourselves? An hour or two, if that? But if we can change that paradigm where you are in that 30-minute city, you can come to Liverpool CBD, right? You can buy a unit that's affordable. You can go to a university that's down the road. You can play in great parklands, enjoy this beautiful river. You've solved the issue. So I encourage each and every one of you, when you're looking around, back council. We've invested $200 million in a 6-star Green Star commercial building right in Liverpool City Centre, designed by FJMT, with a beautiful library right in front of it. A massive investment in saying that we're going to be a city that's going to have corporate jobs. We need to get those 50,000 jobs in our city centre to match the housing growth. Because you cannot talk about housing without talking about employment. So we have a brand new building. I encourage each and one of you to go and see our CEO over there. John, put your hand up. He's happy to take you if you want to lease out some space. Bring your organizations, but more importantly, put your organizations at the epicenter of the growth. Make it easy for your employees to have somewhere where they can actually work close to home and they can have their lives back. Because once they do that, then they're healthy, they're going to be active, they're going to participate in a wonderful society. And I go back to that documentary, look at blue zones, because we as a collective here should make a decision that we want Sydney to become a blue zone where it is a great place to live, work, and play. Why people want to live in Mossman? It's near the water. You've got all the amenity out there. You want to live in the eastern suburbs? Was on when was it, Sunday when I drove down to Bronte because I want to enjoy the beautiful beach, right? But that's not an option that many of us actually have. We need to recreate that in this area. We have the opportunity. The Georges River is gorgeous. It's a great thing, but we just have to make the decision. Say, let's do it, and let's do it together.
Jackie, UDIA president, you are the voice of developers, residential developers, particularly in our region. What role, and Rose wasn't backward before in coming forward in Tilapia and saying, local government, and I think she copped a bit of it, but I think she legitimately said there's here. What can developers do differently to solve the crisis? I know they're offering to build and grow, but what else in the mix can be done at a developer level to move us forward?
That's a really good question, because I think the development industry, if nothing else, is definitely trying to collaborate and be in the room with the politics as much as we possibly can to try and shape some of the policy which is coming out. UDIA put out in June a housing crisis action plan which had 28 recommendations. We are encouraged that some of those recommendations were picked up in the budget which came out on Tuesday. Importantly, I think the culmination of the agencies, WPCA, GCC, into a sort of mega planning department is fantastic. Now it's our job to get in the room to make sure that those extra resources in planning have a laser focus to clear the backlog of assessments, to approve the new assessments coming into the system, and that all helps to boost supply. The other part of it is the enabling infrastructure. I echo your sentiments in relation to a coordinated general type role for housing, which reports to the Premier. I think we're at a tipping point now where the scale and complexity of this thing is so large that no quick fix is going to get us there. So we really need that kind of focus with the purview of the Premier sitting over the top of it to bring the silos together. Minister Jackson was extremely passionate. We need that passion to flow through to the agencies, to planning, who are actually working with us in the room here to get it moving. It's one thing to have the passion at the politics level, that needs to start feeding through, and I think one way of feeding that through down to planning, the people actually working on these things, is to get that sort of coordinator oversight to really push things along.
Are you ready to help pay the levies to pay that infrastructure?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So 400 million went into the Housing Infrastructure Fund, which is fantastic. A bolt-on to that, I think, from the development industry could be a works-in-kind type arrangement. We can deliver it, let's get reimbursed. We can make it happen quicker, let's try and find a way where we can do that, and then the funds can come back to us. Maybe there are things in the actual details of these policies and some of this funding which has been announced that we can influence to try and make things happen quicker. And I think that's a really easy one to see the delivery of that infrastructure happen sooner rather than later.
We've got Tier 1 and Tier 2, for better terms, developers on stage. Joe, you just topped out the magnificent new towers at Marylands, the world's greatest city, where my mother grew up. As Mayor Lisa Lake will attest here today. You're close finishing in Parramatta. Why is Moore Point sitting there as industrial wasteland still?
Great question. I don't know, Chris, to be honest. It's one that troubles me, and a decade now we've been waiting, and it's one of those applications where both sides of the aisle were for it. So Labor and Liberal, with 2 independents. Council actually voted on it twice. So we had no objections at all. There were actually 2 submissions when it was on exhibition, and they were for the application. One of them, which was
The
the
council
hospital.
support, community support.
Correct. And, we're sitting here. It is getting closer. So we received our gateway approval at the start of the year. But we're facing an issue now where we've got 16 hectares there, next door to a firm called Lemac. They have another 16 hectares. Half of our land is vacant, and our issue is now we've got being bombarded by industrial leasing agents that want to lease the land from us. So it's a big problem. So we're sitting there now, really need to make a decision. Is it going to be an industrial estate, and we're going to pack it away for the next 5 to 10 years? Or can we get on with it and start delivering housing? So as time goes on, real estate's like a commodity. Residential, it's beds and sheds now. So apartments built to rent and industrial. So I don't know the answer to that. Hopefully we are going to get closer. And it is there to deliver thousands of homes. Good quality homes for the people of Western Sydney, which I'm very passionate about. Being a person from Western Sydney, we never really got much. There was really a McDonald's on every corner. And maybe Wet n Wild in Blacktown. That's probably all we've received as a people. So it frustrates me, and hopefully the government, with the urgency that there's in the room now, can make a decision. Because as landowners, we are facing a real issue. Do we lock it away, and which we don't want to do, and sign industrial leases, which are paying enormous amounts of money? Because there's another issue called land tax, which is creeping up and up. So hopefully we can get there.
Well, so how hard is it getting to develop in Western Sydney vis-a-vis Eastern Sydney? If it costs as much to build an apartment in Penrith, but you sell it for 3 times as much in Paddington, why are you going to build in Penrith? How do we solve that?
I think the industry understands now, with the amount of inflation that's around construction, that nearly every site in Western Sydney has become unfeasible, right? And that's, I think, going to be the next crisis that no one's probably picked up yet. We went from being able to deliver an apartment for, say, $350,000. Now we're looking at $450,000. So, and then government just continue, whether it's council or state or whatever it is. They talk about affordability, but they're always raising section contributions, new levies. As a developer, we don't get anything from anyone. And I think for the first time, we're probably starting to see that the industries or the people of this state are starting to see that the developer can be part of the solution, not the problem. We are housing providers. We build homes for people. We're going to go home tonight. Everyone's going to put their head on a pillow, and their home was brought to them by a developer, right? I think that's a fact. Whether they built it themselves or they bought it from somebody, a developer brought that online. And it is going to be a massive challenge for Western Sydney, given the increase of construction costs. Ned talks about an apartment that's for sale that may be 70 years old, but it's 300 grand. It does need work, and that is under our delivery cost, right? So we've moved into the inner west, we've moved into the city fringe. We've had to, because Western Sydney is becoming extremely hard to develop in, and That's why you probably don't see Lend-Lease, great developers like Lend-Lease and Mirvac and Stockland don't have cranes in the sky in Western Sydney, right? They can do housing, but going vertical comes at a cost, and you're 100% right, Chris. It virtually costs the same to build in Erskineville, bar some tolls for the tradies and the subbies to get there, versus building in Marylands or Liverpool. So our next great challenge, 4 more point, is going to be, is it feasible now that construction costs have gone up 20 to 30%? Because we know housing has not gone up. If you look at apartments that are probably under $1.5 million, they have not gone up in price since probably 2017, right? There was an article today I saw on ABC that have actually gone backwards a little bit, and costs have gone up. So I think that's another big sleeping issue that we have to look at. And the word VPA and fees, I'm a big advocate. We in big parts of Western Sydney should be an economic zone, and where fees should be probably refunded if housing is brought on in an accelerated timeline. I think that's how you're going to get energy back in the room in Western Sydney.
Sophie, the other great challenge, and before I go to Slido, if you've got your questions, send them up. But Sophie, the great challenge is balancing what we want as people, great sustainable outcomes, beautiful looking buildings, design everywhere, and affordable. From a Stocky's perspective, how do you get that balance? How do you have a beautifully designed place where we're proud to live in and have it affordable at the same time?
Oh, look, we don't think they're mutually exclusive. We actually think you need to do both. You can't deliver density without a livable, thriving community. And we hear we've heard a lot about that today, about density done well. It's our licence to operate, and we know that our customer and our brand really relies on delivering a great product and a community at the end of the day. I think it's really interesting hearing about the construction costs. Yes, that's definitely an issue. And we hear Danita Warren also talking about where are we going to find the resources coming through the system as we reach for these targets. And then if we also start thinking about the planning system, I think there is obviously more opportunity there, because we put a lot of thought and investment into all of our projects. And we have a whole team at Stockland that takes best practice from around the country and delivers it into each of our new projects, working with experts in the industry. But we still find that our projects sit in planning for longer than they should. So we've got a similar issue where this is our role, this is our core business, is to deliver homes, but they are stuck in the system. So back to your point about, a Director General, would that provide us the cut-through that we need? Because we've all got a common goal in this room, and it's about getting more housing out there. So it's an interesting idea that you propose, because we'd like to see more unlocking of the system and that focus, and getting cut through and getting those homes on the ground.
So we've got some, go to the floor, ladies and gentlemen, some really good questions here. So I'll throw to you, Jackie, generally rather than the two developers themselves. Do the margin expectations for developers need to shift to address housing affordability?
Did you say the market expectations?
The margin.
Oh, the margin expectations for developers. Look,
I think it's a public sector question. It's the
You want me to answer that question, Chris? I can answer that. Right, you want me to answer that?
I don't think
any margin left.
I don't think they
in
meant
Western
that they
Sydney
need to shift
in
up.
feasibility. And I think there's enough developers in the room to probably will attest to this. Feasibility pressure is hard.
yeah, and let me provide an analogy rather than sort of address that right on. Do we go to Coles and Woolworths and Aldi and say cost of living pressures are increasing? How about you freebie everybody $100 off their grocery bill, which has gone up significantly? No, we don't, right? There was an article, I think it was either today or yesterday, which basically said that shoplifting in supermarkets has now gone up 25 million per week. That's the hit because of the affordability crisis that's out there. The industry and the world of developers is continually being asked for more, give more, provide more, do more. I get it to a certain extent, but there has to be a line. It's the only industry which is continually being asked, how can you improve beyond what is normal expectation?
Ned, for you, housing from everyone's anonymous, no one's put the name on, so housing cannot be fixed while councils drive workspace targets in every LGA across Greater Sydney. office space needs to be centralised, not everywhere. What do you reckon?
So we, last time I was mayor, we did Amendment 52 in our city centre, which basically took the zoning from 6 to 1 to 10 to 1. And we said, okay, 10% of that should be commercial, which is basically your retail, maybe one floor above that. But then the Department of Planning came in and said, no, we want it to be 20%. That 20% now is killing everything. And we're currently looking at how do we now change that. So it's right. People don't want to be in a building where you have people living upstairs. You have your corporate offices. So imagine as you're going into work, hopping in the lift, then you have mum and dad and the kids hopping in the lift and doing whatever that it's not an appropriate environment. And I think Parramatta Square has demonstrated that a good, strong commercial core is better. So we are looking at that at the moment, and we strongly support that point of view.
Maybe come from your team, Joe, but it said, is there any examples of build to rent being done well in Western Sydney? It's
yes.
the trendiest new acronym in Australia, BTR. Everyone's BTR now.
Yes,
the
I like to
CHPs reckon they've been doing BTR forever, just for a different market. But so where and how, and can it go on as a curated property model in Western Sydney?
I can speak on our behalf. We are opening 2 build-to-rent projects. So the first one in Parramatta in about 8 weeks' time, 10 weeks' time, and our second one in Maryland. So combined, we're looking at just under 700 dwellings, which will be opened, and we're looking at other sites in Western Sydney at the moment, particularly more points. So we're hoping that our first stage would be 1,000 built-to-rent apartments right opposite the hospital with the pedestrian footbridge going in. That was before all the cost pressures, so we're just working through that at the moment and working with council and the state government to see what we can do there. But ourselves will be delivering 2 built-to-rent buildings in Western Sydney in the next 3 months.
One for Jackie. Do you believe developers can provide the type of quality and density that people need, and will the community take more density for better outcomes?
I think consistent with other comments which have sort of been directed the same questions, yes, I do think the development community can build quality. I think the development community wants to build quality, and consistent with all the environmental sustainability targets, we just have to make sure we find a way to do that. Do I think the community will cop it? Again, I'm consistent with everybody else. If it's done right, if there's amenity around the corner, if you've got access to services, if your workplace is close, absolutely, because we have to. And I think the general lay person, the average punter, just needs to understand how deep into this crisis we are and really start to adjust their thinking a little bit, because otherwise it's going to be a very different looking Australia and New South Wales than what we're used to. We've all seen the footage coming out of LA. We've all seen the street, which is beautiful, and then one street back, it's just an absolute nightmare that you would never want to walk down with your children, with your partner, with your grandmother, with anybody. We don't want that happening here in New South Wales, and so for that, we need to get on board with that density. Developers are on board with the quality. It has to be a whole-of-state approach to fixing this problem.
Sophie, Joe mentioned before about the tier 1s sort of pulling back to more eastern thing because of costs, and the tier 2 developers taking the load locally. You're also landowners in retail spaces. I think with Coronation, Marylands has seen development on the land used to be Stockland's, Wetherill Park. Do you see a future of good design of people living above the mall? Is the towers out of shopping centres, which are usually well connected to transport, that have amenity, that literally have shops on board and have density, is one of the simple solutions we start building out on the top of shopping centres?
Absolutely. I mean, we see opportunity because it's all back to the point of you're next to services, you're next to amenity, and you're creating density and life and vibrancy that then feeds back into the shopping centre or the town centre. But what we do need when we're looking at these things, we're always looking at what is the risk and what's the certainty. And it comes back down to where is our money best invested. So we're always looking for that certainty.
Because somebody put their name to the question, the great Phil Parasiris from Western Sydney Uni, the greatest single developer in Western Sydney, he wants to talk about, maybe other people talking about their perspectives of BTR. So, Ned, for you, do you favour developments that are built to rent either because they're curated or because does it demand quality because the developer hangs around? Is that an inbuilt safeguard that is a better way of doing something?
Look, they are a positive. There's no doubt about it, and they are needed. But I really think that we need to be very cautious about build to rent. I know it's the buzzword, and we all want it, but build to rent to me is a failure. And why I say that is that Australians have their wealth in their homes. If we're now telling the kids who are coming out of school and going to university that we failed, that we can't create a system where a nation as big as ours and you can't own your own property, that when you retire, you're going to still be liable for rent. Imagine that. Imagine if our parents rented their whole lives. Imagine the financial position. And some of them have done that, but yes. So I'm more built to rent as a interim solution. Go for it, no problems. But ultimately, we need home ownership is what is vital to ensuring that people are have financial freedom in their older years.
Concept of communities. We're not just building homes, we're building places for people to live. From both a developer and a governance perspective, is the discussion there? Is there enough being put on the development community to ensure a great social outcome? Is there councils having high enough ambition to look at the actual end product development, be it design, be it sustainability, be it accessibility, and against all of that, can you do all of that and still be affordable?
So if you look at what the minister described about what people want, what is good development, I think we need the challenge when you have small sites, when you have singular, one or two buildings, you don't have the scale to create something really nice. They're very singular. Fragmented ownership is a significant problem, and I think if we're going to tackle this problem that we have now, we need to look at where are the big land holdings and work not necessarily with the landowner, but with the developer. Because when you rezone land for the landowner, they get the uplift, they settle it off, and they get all the upside while the developer still works on their 20% margin. Now, even if the developer wanted to adjust their margin for that question, the banks won't lend them. The banks need a buffer, and the banks are a massive role into this whole solution of housing affordability. I'll give you a quick little example, and I'm not saying it just because he's here. So councils had a vision for a long time getting back down to the river and unlocking the Georges River, funny enough, Australia's Australia's fourth oldest city since colonisation, and founded by Governor Macquarie as the first free city. So there was a beautiful paper mill building along the river, played a massive role in the history of New South Wales, and it was approved to put townhouses in there, basically repurposing the heritage building and putting a whole bunch of townhouses in it. And until one day, I think Joe got a call from a real estate agent saying there's a block of land near the river in Liverpool. He's like, what river, right? And that project, if you look at it now, designed by, I think, 700-800 units that have gone there, roughly, around and about. Go and have a look at the design of those buildings, all designed by mainly Woods Bagot. One is by SJB, right? Design that you wouldn't think exists in this area. I know they use the half-height bricks, the $6 bricks down in Victoria. They've restored the heritage building, and they provided the best, I would say, public dining space that we have in the area that's not funded by poker machines or alcohol, but it's funded by development, all by saying a bit of airspace. The buildings look wonderful. The people love living there. There's a big waiting list to go there. And I'll tell you, there was an interesting little thing that happened. We had there was a design for a building. I think this one's called the Guild. Nice, beautiful building, maybe 12 stories, 14 stories. Next along the water, and then there was a pathway with a 2-story housing product that had this nice roof similar to the actual paper mill. And someone from council said, no, we don't want you to have a big tall building near the water. We want you to drop it down and spread it over, and we don't want those townhouses there. And the reason why is they were worried about on the winter solstice, that a fisherman in the water will not get enough sunlight. This is the planning considerations. And Joe had given up. I said, I want those because they look good. So if you want to see good quality development, go check out the paper mill. Also, if you want another one, which I think we need to talk a lot more about, is Ed Square. Fraser's has done an amazing project down at 8 Square. Go down there and check it out. It's on the train station. It's development done right as a Todd. It's got great amenities, shopping centers, cinemas, really, really, really good quality. But that was done because they were allowed to get some uplift, and it was a super lot from the government.
Okay, the clock says we've got 5 minutes to go. I want to spend it at each of you. Today's a day about solutions, not just whinging. Each of you come up with one thing, just the one thing you want to see change that can make a significant impact. Without any warning, I might start with you, Sophie, and go along the thing.
The one thing, look, one thing's hard. I think it is about...
I don't think you only think there is only one thing. I just want only one thing from each of you.
Me. I think it's really about prioritisation and really understanding where are we going to put all these homes that have been targeted, and then getting the cut through in order to deliver and execute.
I'll give you a light of reply, Ned. We'll go the other end. Joe, what's the one thing that can move the dial?
If I was in government, I'd go down to Office Works, I'll buy a big rubber stamp that said approved. I'll buy a bucket of red ink, and I'll open up every single application there is, and I'll just start stamping. I think, you know, I think people don't realise how much work goes into submitting a DA, how many professional consultants input is in there to submit a DA. There's enough oversight with that, I believe, and I think something where if it's should be deemed approved if we pass a period of, say, 3 months or 6 months. I don't know of any DAs, not rezonings, but DAs that generally don't comply with probably 95% of all the boxes you've got to tick. So that's what I would be doing.
Jack?
Oh, I could pick...
They had a 28-point plan, by the way, so she's got to pick her favourite.
I was just about to say, of the 28
UDIA's
points...
favourite one.
I'm going to go really general. What we've seen, and I think we all saw it through Minister Jackson, and I'm sure we're all going to see it with Minister Scully, is real passion to try and improve the current challenges we have with the housing crisis. I would love to see that passion just filter through planning, to come with a mindset to get it done, rather than here's another roadblock we need to kind of work through. Just crack on. That might be a little bit unfair, but I just feel as though there's momentum which is building from the top. It now needs to flow through all those levels of the agencies to really kind of get this state moving.
Lastly, Ned, because we're in your city and you're the mayor, I'm going to give you one. I no doubt your one's going to be something state government can do better, and then I'm going to say, what can you do better? What can council do better as well?
Great. All right. Can I throw federal so I can make it 3 then? Number 1, accountability equals affordability. When you lodge an application, you should have a clear timeline of when it will be assessed. Simple as that. Is it yes? Is it no? That simple thing will change the whole dynamic, because when anyone is doing any project, they have a timeline. The biggest variable that exists is how long will council look at it for? Right? So we're now doing that at council. We've got 10-day approvals for houses that are above CDC, so that's a new initiative that we brought back going. But we need to have some clear guidelines. We talked about, Adam mentioned 75,000 dwellings in New South Wales. You know, how much capital is involved in that? We need to keep it moving and moving and moving. So that is the main thing, that if we're doing a council, we're going to be doing that. If you're doing, my view is, if you're doing a unit building, no development should take more than 6 months to assess. I think that's a very, very fair amount of time. That 108-day average time that we talk about is the worst metric that exists. We shouldn't even look at it. Don't even talk about it anymore, because a carport is involved in that, right? A change of use for a shop, right? Housing, a unit building is not you might have 1 or 2 unit building applications that are sitting there for 2 or 3 years, but no, it's still 108 days average. So we need to really look at what the proper number is.
Okay. I think you heard today from a perspective that from frustration can hopefully come progress. I know,
Chris, sorry, yep. I got to put my little tiny other one from the state.
There's another one.
When you have the growth, so growth should equal funding. If you're a council who's prepared to take the growth and has to take the growth, then you should get funding associated with it. I want to give you a quick little example. West Invest was a massive opportunity and had to improve livability in Western Sydney. Right? Now, let's talk about an equity thing. Westinvest was sold, predicated on toll income from people in these regions, right? And that's what the value was based upon. Burwood, the big municipality of Burwood, received $1,907 per capita from Westinvest, right? So think about that for a second.
$1,000 a head. Yep.
Right? $1,900 a head.
$2,000 a head.
$2,000 a head. Liverpool, we got $603 per head. It's pretty good, $170 million. We're going to unlock the river. There's a lot of great stuff. But don't think we could have a conversation with government about how best to spend that, i.e., let's get a bridge over the river. It was more like, oh, we like this one, we didn't like that one, but we know it. So we have these challenges where we actually want to say, no, we actually prefer putting money here, because we just threw in any application that we had. And the best one, if you speak to my colleague, and I'll put this in, the lovely mayor of Fairfield, $128 per head. All right? How was that even fair? Why do we even have to have, why wasn't it linked to population growth and economic growth? A simple thing. The trucks that are polluting with all the diesel particulate that are driving through Fairfield and driving through Liverpool, and all those wonderful economic growth that we talk about with the airport, which is in Liverpool, all those trucks are coming past us here and they're paying those tolls, but yet we are once again in Western Sydney subsidizing other areas of Sydney. Put a simple formula in place and be fair and equal about it.
A big red, well done. There's a big red box there saying get off stage. There's a big planning minister up the back there who'll be telling us to get off stage soon. Can I say, in thanking the panel, I think you've had a perspective across the board from government and the private sector. Importantly, I think hopefully we got solutions, and hopefully that's what about today is. We proposed our own. We proposed the Minister for Planning and Housing and the Premier should have a single person reporting to them to help Kirsten, to help Alex, to help all the players who have to crunch housing. It worked for the Olympic Games. We delivered the greatest games ever. If we're going to solve this crisis, let's have the greatest solution ever. And frankly, there's one simple solution. Build more homes, build them quickly, stop talking about them, start building them. Please thank our panel for their time today.